All right, keeps going back.
Welcome everybody to the Unity Motorsports live chat tonight. I know that Uncle Tony's Garage is doing a live chat build of his Slant 6 project, but we wanted to do this because
I wanted to interrupt.
Yeah, it's been 4 months, guys, since we actually did a live chat.
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
Yep.
So it's just amazing how time flies. But first and foremost, I want to do some channel maintenance for both of us. I cannot thank you viewers enough for what y'all have done in the past little bit. I just crossed 15,000 subscribers, and that is all because of you guys. And my channel also hit another milestone of 2 million views and within 100 videos, because I just published my 100th video a few weeks back. So anyways, I just wanted to do that. And David's been on the same roller coaster ride as myself. And for those of you who do not know, this is the man, the myth, and the legend, David Vizard. How do you like that introduction?
Right. Folks, I've got to pay him so much a month for these compliments. But he's cheap.
I am cheap.
That's what his wife said.
Yeah, well, that's a fact. But anyways, no, the support from our viewers mean the world to us. It's what actually inspires us to keep doing this type thing, you know? The comments, the encouragement.
Can I make a comment there, Andy?
Yeah.
Right. And I haven't discussed this with Andy, but I'm absolutely going to bet that he's on the same course as I am. I am finding that since I can't get out and see everybody I want to, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you got wheels and wings or what, you still can't see as many people as you can entertain on the internet. And I really enjoy it. I mean, this is so far from work, isn't it, Andy?
It is. It really is.
I mean, you get to, 99% of the people you get to talk to are great guys. The other 1%, yeah, you can't win them all, right?
Troll life.
Yeah. But, you know, I actually thought, and I'm going to talk to Andy about this, I actually thought about doing a video which analyzes what the day in a life of a troll is likely to be. Go into all the psychology and things like this, right? Because I don't think your average troll knows, right? I find, do you find that most of them, the first thing you think of is that they're angry?
That's how they come across.
Yep, they're angry, right?
But I've also come to realize that they're fans in their own respect. You know, whether you're getting good press or bad press, it's still press.
It's not the bad press.
Yeah.
That's the thing. If somebody wants to criticize what we're doing, there's no problem.
Right.
They need to be civil about it, right? It's just calling people names and trying to run them down.
That's not cool.
It's not going to achieve anything at all except click, turn them off.
Yeah. So the reason why we want to do this live chat is I just posted a video on my channel about kind of like an update of Project Mixed Up Boss, the everlasting engine project. It's been going on forever.
Look, it's also pretty complicated. And
let's
face it, there's times when we couldn't get parts.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, how long have we been angling towards an intake manifold?
Oh, wow. We've been
a year
batting that around for a year.
Right. Well, we got it now.
Yeah.
We've got to do a bit of filling on it and
it'll be ready to rock and roll.
But we weren't in a position to do it a few weeks back, no matter how badly we wanted to.
Exactly. And we got to talk to Greg to get the dyno day set up. Yep. So it is around the corner, y'all.
Oh, guys, we are going to introduce you to one of my very good friends in Charlotte, right? Greg Finnegan. And if you guessed he might be of Irish heritage, You're right. New York Irish heritage. You should hear his accent. South Carolina. Anyway, Greg has got a very comprehensive and very smart dyno cell.
Yes, it is.
He's a commercial realtor, and his hobby is building and dyno testing engines. And for a couple of years, before we had all this COVID-19 stuff, he organized the, what did he call
Race
it?
Engine
Race
Challenge.
Engine Challenge, right?
Yes.
It was like Engine Masters, except I think he had a better idea of making the rules for it. And I think what it did was it allowed people more freedom to be able to
more
come in for
flexibility.
it, and more freedom in what they did. So there was a good measure of, how should I say, what's the word I'm looking for? Ingenuity involved.
Yes.
Right. So that's good. But unfortunately, with the situation with the COVID-19, he's had to axe that. Now, what we hope to do is to see if we can do this in conjunction with Greg and produce something like Motor Trend is doing, right?
He has the facility perfect
He's
for
got the facility, and not only that, he builds engines really well. I mean,
yes,
he won one of Engine Masters ones, didn't he?
he did.
Right. So he knows how to do stuff, and he's very adventurous with his builds, right? Which is good. So I'm hoping that if we can make all this work, we'll start off by having him on the show.
Right.
Right. So that you get to know this character. And I say character, yeah, you'll find he's a character. But also, suddenly our ability to test stuff, and I'm talking about off in left field stuff that you'd never think of testing.
We have a means to do it.
We now have a means to do it, yes. And it's not some minor dyno cell. It is top notch. I mean,
it's
it
the
is
most sophisticated
good
superflow that
anything that you see out there on the internet, right?
So anyways, thought we would talk a little bit about Mixed Up Boss. You know, I've picked up a ton of new subscribers here in the last little bit. And in that video that I did, I didn't go into the nuts and bolts detail.
What? I just read John's comment there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, I didn't go into the nuts and bolts about the build and what it actually consists of. So I'm going to give you a breakdown of that. And then we're going to talk about something else that I haven't mentioned. Price. How much have I got invested in this motor build? Do you think people will be shocked?
Well, I would have thought you were going to ask me how much I've got invested in you.
Hours upon hours upon hours.
Look, you know, it's been fun.
I know it has been.
I mean, that engine is attempting to achieve many goals all in once.
Right.
And you're saying, should you aboard a crate motor?
Right.
What will you achieve? You'll tell them all how you save up money and buy a crate motor.
Pretty much.
End of story. On the other hand, how many tricks have we come up with because we've had a problem here, we've had a problem there? So, okay, well, you know what we can do here?
We can do something.
We've done it.
So basically, starting at the bottom, it has a Mylodon oil pan. It's a competition series with a Melling Select oil pump. The short block actually started out as a Ford Racing 427 completed deal. And I'll go into the price of that later, but basically I was at the right place at the right time.
Yes.
And so, but anyways, so knowing that block has a good reputation, it's not maybe as good as a Dart SHP or something like that. I don't know. I've never tested the limits of this block. This is actually my first Ford Racing block. We've always dealt with World blocks and Dart blocks and stuff like that. But anyways.
Now, somebody out there may be able to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I thought Dark cast those blocks for Ford.
And that may be true. I do not know.
Right. So in essence, it's
Pretty much a
a
dark block. Yeah. But it has a scat rotating assembly in it, 4340 forged crank with their good H-beam rods with ARP 2000 bolts, ARP fasteners throughout. The pistons are custom diamond piston because one of the things that we wanted to do was give it. See, you got to go back. I actually put a deposit on these heads before I had the short block. And my original plan was to put them on that 393, and he talked me out of it. He said, no, those heads, yeah. He said, those heads are too special to go on just a plain Jane 393.
I remember that.
And
427 is a magic number.
yeah, so then we turned the 427 into 429. That's just how it all evolved. And but it's got diamond pistons, 11-to-1 compression, and then for the cylinder heads, you know about the Greg Brown Hammerhead Performance Engines deal. I've got a ton of information on my channel about it. We did flow testing here, and basically it blew both of us away with the amount of CFM versus port energy that those heads delivered, and the velocity.
You know, I'd heard of Greg.
Yeah.
Right. Never met the guy. Still haven't.
Right.
I've only spoken to him briefly on the phone. I knew these heads existed. I knew that they were an okay cylinder head, at least. And when we got them on the flow bench, boy, I'll tell you what, my estimation of Greg went up in leaps and bounds, didn't it? It was that guy just, we got to tell him the price.
Yeah, we'll get into all that.
Yeah. Greg deserves our support because his number one goal has been to meet the racers, high performance guys' needs,
right,
and then make a living. What we don't want is for him to go out of business because we will lose one of the best Ford cylinder heads on the market.
Right.
Period.
And so, given that it's got 11-to-1 compression, we wanted to run this combination because David and I actually toyed around with the idea of porting the heads and building an all-out 1,000 horsepower NA build, and we decided no,
not yet.
Let's show what the heads are capable of out of the box. That way, it's a fair representation of anyone who may go and buy these heads and show what they're capable of.
Yes. And now, the other conclusion we came to that should you want to do a basic porting job, all you got to do is smooth out everything, skinny down the guide boss, and blend everything in. That's it.
Yeah.
And suddenly you've got something that now flows like it's a NASCAR head.
Right.
Right.
And for those who don't know, the thing about it is those heads out of the box flow 395 CFM. Okay.
And a lot of cup car heads don't do that.
I know.
Or they didn't do until recently.
And then you have people like Darren Morgan who has pushed them past 500 CFM.
Got to 500.
Oh, yeah. With the same casting.
Wow.
You know, so, but anyways.
I knew 450 was on because it looked too good a port not to be.
Greg got 450. I think that is what his heads flowed when he won the race engine challenge with that. Yeah. So, but, so then it came time to pick a camshaft to work with 11-to-1 compression, be able to run on 93 octane pump fuel, and deliver the torque and power that we were looking for. And if you don't know how we select cams, you really need to go to David Vizard Performance and look at his cam program. And because really what we did, and this is my doing, I wanted to pick an off-the-shelf cam, something that was obtainable to people. And so what we did is we put all of the information of the cylinder heads and the combination in, and then I found the closest thing that we could find. Now, it's not going to be exact. You know, it's not exactly what his program spec'd out. So we may be giving away power. In fact, I know we are giving away power.
I
But
can't remember what we ended up with.
it's a solid roller. It's 259 degrees at 50 on the intake, 263 on the exhaust, 674 lift on the intake, 705 on exhaust. And it's on a 108.
Is it a comp camshaft?
No, it's Howard's.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's pretty much the combination. And we're expecting it to be somewhere based off of what our combined knowledge, which his is way more intense than mine, somewhere in the 750 horsepower range. Now, I've said it time and time again, the peak power number is kind of like the magic bullet, but we're concerned about average torque per production. You know, we strive for foot-pounds per cube when it comes to trying to run on 93 octane pump gas. If we can get 1.4 foot-pounds per cube on 93 octane, then we're doing good.
Well, to be honest, Andy, I think that we'll probably scrape just by that.
Yeah, I think so.
Right,
you know,
11-to-1 compression.
Yeah.
The heads have got all the ingredients that the IOP program says they need.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make a prediction now. 1.43.
That sounds like a plan. And that's not too far off what we did with the 393 that was in my truck, you know?
Now, what did we get on that?
1.42.
We did?
Mm-hmm.
So we're better than I thought then.
Yeah.
Good.
So now we're going to talk price, because this is where it all comes together.
Yep. Nothing is any good if you can't afford it.
Right. So when I set out to build this thing, I could have went to any manufacturer and picked up any crate engine out there, but making this kind of power, but you would be looking at a given of $20,000. You go look at 750 horsepower crate engines, doesn't matter if it's Ford, Chevy, whatever, you're going to spend upwards of 20 grand. And I've had people emailing me asking me how much I have in this particular setup. I know people's going to say, well, you could do an LS and you can do this with boost and you know, just go crazy. Let's see here. Yeah, we don't build mediocre 1.2 foot-pounds per cube, you know, and basically the more power that you make in a will be multiplied when you apply boost to that. So it just, you know, it's better to start off good. But for the first time last night, I actually took the time and got all of my receipts out. Man, I was dreading doing it. You know, when you start looking at those number figures, it's like,
what possessed me to spend all this?
Yeah. Am I crazy? Well, I know I'm crazy. But so anyways, going back to that Ford Racing short block, what was you going to say?
Is that the Woody that
This guy right here?
does the aerodynamics?
I don't know. And Shane, yeah, Darren Morgan spoke highly of the build, and he was surprised by the camshaft that we're running, because it is a small cam. But it goes back to the point of us putting this thing in a 4,000-pound truck.
Yeah.
And trying to make torque. We could put the right cam in it and shoot past 800 horsepower with no problems.
Yep. You know, horsepower sells engines, torque moves mountains.
That's the way we look at it. But so getting back into the price, I've done a lot of finagling and trading to get this engine built. And when I say that is, like I was talking about the short block, I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. There was a fellow that I knew that had that short block, Ford Racing short block, that was going to use it in a 427 Cobra replica car. And make a long story short, he was going through a divorce and had to liquidate all of that stuff. And so he sold it to me at a bargain price. I wound up getting it for around $3,500. And you go to like Summit or Jegs, and that same short block's going to be $5,500. But all in expenses on this engine build, I'm $14,269. That is my total expense. Now, like I said, I have traded things along the way. For instance, small cam, yeah, 212. It's all relative, in what you're doing. The more cubic inches you have, the more camshaft you have to get the same, power band. But anyways, $14,000 sounds like a lot, but for me, it was about actually getting what I wanted. The engine that I actually wanted, something that no one else has. Now, that's a problem.
Wait till they see the engine; they'll think 14 grand was a mere pittance.
Yeah. The real expense comes with the heads and valve train, but you're looking at a little over $7,000 for those cylinder heads, but they come equipped. You get the Jessel valve train, you get the valve covers. It is a package deal. So when you start adding up the money, that $7,000 doesn't seem as bad. If I were to build a D3 headed small block Ford, I could easily have the same amount of money tied up into it. Buying pieces individual.
I know that Don was selling the NASCAR heads, which of course, if you wanted to win races, you pretty much had to have his heads. But he was selling them 10 years ago. They were going out the door at 10 grand.
Yeah.
That's without valves.
Yeah.
No rockers, right? Now, sure, they flowed more than these heads, but they weren't as cast. They had Don's magic in them, and there was hundreds of hours of work went into those heads.
I know.
Right? These heads here, if I gave these heads to Don to do,
oh my gosh,
he'd be doing that 480, 500 CFM, right? Because those heads have got the rules that Greg used to do those. Basically, was the intake and exhaust has got to be in the same place, right? Or did the exhaust move up?
What's that? The exhaust moved up slightly, yeah.
Yeah. So
now this guy right here, John says, if I were a Ford guy, I would definitely listen to you guys. What you don't know is, look what's right here. You see that? That's Chevrolet right there.
Chevrolet.
We got a Dodge Cup car out there. So we don't really fit in any one type box. I just happen to have a Ford that I mean, come on. I'm going to show you something. Now, many of you see me on a lot of the Mopar channels commenting, right? And I'm not a troll to those channels. And I've got a reason for that. Many of you do not know.
I wonder if this is going to come out, Andy.
It will. Look at that. That's my dad in 1984 with my first car. All right. Here's me when I was 14 working on that Duster. So I've always had.
You started off Chrysler and wandered off the.
I built Chevrolets, Fords, AMCs, you name it. But anyways, change the subject here. Now this guy right here,
Jonathan, if I were a Ford guy, I would definitely listen to you guys.
That's what I was just talking about.
Now, wait a minute. You must be listening to have answered.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, now who posted that before we talked about it?
Oh.
But guys, I'm going to tell you something. This guy right here, Wanna Go Fishing, has one of the best YouTube channels going, period. Now, he is mainly a fishing channel, but man, he's funny to watch. He's just a great guy. And I've talked to him. He's actually got a Honda Monkey like that I bought.
I have I don't like fishing. It's boring.
Well, I know.
But I've been on his channel accidentally, and I thought, this guy's good.
Well, he is the reason why I bought that little Honda Monkey mini
Really?
bike. He is the reason why I bought it. Best Honda salesman ever. Two Hacks Garage. Now, a lot of these people are in here. They're part of the No Name Nationals crowd. And I'm going to tell you guys something right now. It has done my heart so good seeing you guys start channels and get involved with this whole process of building cars and making content. John Wilburn, I know he's on here, but I have to give him a huge amount of credit in pushing my channel to where it is today. I would not have the subscribers, I would not have the following that I have if it wasn't for John Wilburn. He reached out to me when I probably had 100 subscribers and telling me, man, you got some good stuff. And then he got me in contact with Uncle Tony's Garage. And then it's just been a whirlwind. So yeah, if you make content, stick with it, be consistent with it, and good things will come. And
John, question. Backing up the deal there, right? Anything that needs to be done to help quick, I've forgotten the name.
No Name National.
No, the
What?
hospital.
Oh, St. Jude's.
St. Jude's, that's right.
Well, he's got something that, that live I was telling you about that we're going to do with him.
Yep.
We'll discuss all that down the road.
Yeah. So anytime you want to call me, John, don't hesitate, just do it.
Yes. The No Name Nationals by John Wilburn and the AHRA Dallas Brown. It's going to be huge. And I am going to take Tony's money. I feel sorry for him.
No, you
but
don't.
Not really. But there was one question back here, and I can't find it. But anyways, it was asking what kind of nitrous kit will be on my engine setup.
Oh yeah, I saw that one.
Right here it is.
Yeah.
It will be a fogger kit. And that's all I'm going to say. And you'll never know if I'm running it or if I'm not running it. Because that's just...
Why aren't you going to go any faster?
Well, they're going to see it and they're going to be thinking, well, is that on nitrous or not nitrous? And then when I do make a nitrous run, there'll be no mistaking it.
Right. Okay, where were we on the list?
All right. So, David, we've talked a lot about our channels and us doing more things together.
Yeah.
What have you got in the fire right now that you really need to talk about?
Well, I do have something to show you guys here. Let me just put this cup somewhere out of the way. That will do. Right, I'm doing this cylinder head for Richard Holdener, a turbo 2.2 Chrysler. Chrysler guys, I do Chrysler. Do?
You've been hanging around me way too much.
Okay. Now, can we see this? Maybe I should turn it up the other way, right? I've got the intake port done, and I have already posted a video on that. And I'm just about to finish up a video with the science of doing this chamber. It's not just modified chamber, right? There's these dimensions here and all that are calculated. Now, I have not done what I call the exhaust roll. If you want to know what that is, because you won't ever have heard of it before, you'll have to go on and see the video I'm going to post on this, probably about Tuesday or Wednesday, right? And it'll have the flow figures that the chamber's been responsible for. And I will explain something that that's worth about the equivalent power of about 2 pounds extra of boost for nothing with a simple chamber mod. It will work on any chamber that resembles a bathtub.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm going to show you. You won't have seen it anywhere else. It's no good asking somebody, what's the exhaust roll on a chamber? Because they'll look at you blank and say, you've been drinking too much. Right?
You know, the one thing I was actually impressed with, that head is not as bad as it actually looked.
No.
I was surprised.
I tell you, when I first looked at it, I thought, what was Chrysler doing?
Come on through.
My dear, come on through.
Yeah,
come on.
what are you moving on? Everybody's watching the World War. I mean,
No, they're not. They're watching us.
Whatever it is you tell them, what's most important is the one that.
That was David's better half.
That's my political wife. Right? I tend not to watch the news. I get the news from her in the evening, filtered to the most important points. Right? You wouldn't believe how well she keeps you up to speed with the minimum amount of time used up. Right?
But yeah, that head is so much better than it actually
Yes,
looks.
I remember saying early on, it doesn't look like Chrysler did a very good job because the chamber looked shrouded. And when I started to go through all the math and the flow bench results, I found, no, they knew what they were doing. Right? It just didn't look like it.
But basically, you don't judge the book by the cover.
Mistake there, right? So this head, it looks very plain Jane. Yeah. Look at the chamber difference here, right? Let me move it a bit closer. Can you see the difference between this chamber here, the shape of it, and this one, right? The biggest problem I had with these chambers is there was a step on the top of each seat, right? So you can see where I machined that off with my Goodson 3D seat and guide stuff, right? And this one here, I spent about an hour and a half just blending everything out. So anyway, the flow figures for that will be available.
Yeah.
Right.
You want me to get it?
I got it. It's a good job. It's small and aluminum. It's aluminum.
What's going on, Bad Tree? Glad to have you in the house. But yeah, so today I actually spent some time out there building the transmission for Casper, the Ford C4. Now, if there's one Achilles heel to my whole combination, it's going to be that. But I hope, given the input that I've had from Dynamic Racing, because those guys are super awesome. They're the ones who built the transmission originally and give me a lot of good pointers. And you'll be seeing a video on that on my channel coming up this coming week of me putting that thing back together. White Trash Motorsports, glad to have you. But, you know, basically for this engine deal, it has been ongoing. We've been wrapping our heads around trying to see one thing that I want to do. And I don't know if most of you know this, but when I had my 393, I spent a great amount of time of trying to get max fuel economy. You remember all that stuff that I was doing crazy?
Yep. You must have burned so many gallons of fuel trying to find economy. It was unreal.
But it was worth it. You know, basically I was able to have 600 horsepower, tunnel ram 393 in a 4,000 pound truck with 430 gears getting 16 miles to the gallon. You know, and that's.
And you had a slippery torque.
Yeah, it had a 4,500 stall converter in it. I mean, so I'm really excited about this new combination because David and I, we've pretty much settled on the Dominator route. Wouldn't you say?
I like Dominators, so you know, I'm coming into this biased, right?
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean to say I don't like the 4150s. To be honest, when when I first came over here in 1975, right, and I was forcibly confronted with hollies, right? In England, you could ignore them because there weren't many of them, right? I could not believe how mundanely simple it was, and that most hot rodders accepted the fact that they were going to have to do a lot of drilling, tweaking, and all that to get it to do what they wanted to do on a performance car.
Right.
You know, I was used to Weber carburetors. In fact, you know, I did a lot of design work on Webers for a well-known OEM company. But anyway, the thing is with a Weber, you could alter any circuit by any amount you want, right? The biggest problem most side draft Webers have is that what we call the auxiliary venturi is that what you call the booster, right? Both terms are equally correct, so I use them interchangeably. Now the thing is that the performance of the auxiliary venturi on a lot of those side draft carburetors needs some work. The auxiliary venturi they've got on the IDA, the downdraft IDAs, works great. That IDA range of carburetors is freaking awesome. That's it. That's the only description for it. Now, when I first came over here, I moved to Tucson, right? And I was continually frustrated with Holley carburetors because they were so crude. However, just down the road is Dave Braswell, and we became friends, right? And I'll tell you, I can tell you some stories about Dave, and that you unless I tell them, you'll never hear them, right? But that guy, I can tell you that when it comes to being sporting, he's solid gentleman, that's for sure, right? Got a lot of respect for him in that area, right? Now the thing is Dave taught me such a huge amount about Holley carburetors that it shortcut my going from novice to expert. I mean, I have one of the best teachers in the country,
Right.
if not the best.
And I've had the best teacher, by the way.
Well, you can pass that back to Dave, right? I mean, the other Dave.
Yeah.
But Holley has moved up the ranks so far in perfecting their carburetor. It's not perfect. It's just so damn close to it. If you're prepared to take the time to calibrate it, it's good. People say, why haven't I moved on to fuel injection? Why? I like fuel injection, but I've got to say the carburetors they make, they get the results for what, third of the price?
Yeah.
And I can throw jets at it and all that, no bother to wire anything up and that. And hey, if I had to give Holley a score out of 10, it's like 9.99.
See,
right? Nothing's perfect, but that's about as good as you're ever going to get.
and I've been down that road. You remember when I had my shop?
Yeah.
I did mostly fuel injected builds, and I just kept being so frustrated by the nuances of anytime you had to change something, it was going to be way more involved. With a carburetor, you make your changes. It's the epitome of the analog device. That is my quote for a carburetor, because you become the computer and you can make that device do anything you want.
Can I have my phrase here?
Yes.
With a fuel injection, you tell it what to do by a computer. The Holley carburetor, they're all female.
All of them.
You persuade it to do what you want it to do, right? And if you treat it right, it'll do just that.
Yeah. So, and going back to the mixed up balls and the dominators, my ultimate goal is to see how much fuel economy I can get from dual dominators. Something that no one in their right mind would ever do.
Now you've got a challenge, right?
That is a challenge that I want. I don't care about anything else, but I want to see how much because here's the thing. from the standpoint of the manufacturer, the idle circuits, the transfer slots, the principles are still the same as the 4150. It's only once you get into the main circuit that things start really changing dramatically with the Dominator.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I think that I can duplicate. Now, he may tell me I'm crazy. Well, actually, he will tell me I'm crazy. But,
Yeah, you're crazy.
but the fact that I'm willing to spend that much time and effort on a set of Dominators to
Andy,
get fuel economy.
I've got a shortcut.
What?
SU made a little device, right?
Yeah.
That goes in the circuit, and you just hook 2 wires up to it, and it's got a vacuum sensor. And when you let off the throttle,
Mm-hmm.
right, it bleeds air into the system to lean it out, and you can adjust it.
Yeah.
So basically, what you can do is get your miles per gallon meter, drive along the road, and you can tweak it. And there we go, got that right.
And one thing I do want to pick your brain about, and I've never done it, and I'm going to do it here live. What is your, because I've had countless people asking me my thoughts on, say, the Thermoquad, Carter Thermoquad, and the Predator carburetor. What's your take on those? Because I've never really messed with either one.
I have only got experience with the Predator, right? However, a friend of mine who ran a pro stock car, right? Well, he didn't run it, he drove it, but he had a dyno facility. And he used a Carter AFB on his Chevy.
Right.
Right. This guy had got every circuit of this thing dialed in the way he wanted it, right? And he was getting great mileage to it, along with good power. He had an El Camino, and I think it was making like 380 at the wheels.
That's pretty impressive.
And yeah, and it had a 3-speed
Automatic in it.
Yeah, 3-speed quick
Turbo
turbo 350, right? And on the freeway, he got to be getting like 19 to the gallon from it. And he used to truck it. Pro stock drivers don't drive slowly.
Right.
Right? It's not in their nature.
Yeah.
In fact, their mind doesn't register speed until you get to 100 miles an hour.
Right. Robert asked me, am I running a air fuel meter on Casper? Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, when I first started running a wideband air fuel meter, I thought I knew something about reading plugs. You know, I considered myself well-versed. I've been doing it for years. But until I put that wideband in there,
yep,
and I could actually put a picture with, this is a 13-to-1 plug reading. This is a 10-to-1 plug reading. And get, you know what I'm saying? Your mind opens up to different things, because what I thought was lean before wasn't lean, you know?
Yes. Right. Now, I've had people say to me, they've asked me about, fuel air mixtures, right? And I said to them, don't mess around with plug reading. Get yourself an O2 sensor. And I've had comments from bystanders saying, hey, plug reading was okay for Smokey. It's going to be okay for me. And I look at them and I say, yes. It took Smokey 30 years to get there. How old are you? 30. Oh, well, you've only got another 20 to go, right? So you'll be able to read plugs pretty good in 20 years' time. Get yourself an O2 meter. But now, here's the other thing. My Avenger Racer, the plugs never read anything like the O2 meter.
Right.
Now, I say O2 meter. My O2 meter back then was a big machine about the size of a tea carton, i.e. about this wide, this high, and that deep. And what we found is that when the plugs looked lean, the mixture was right, and that's where it made the most horsepower, right? And the mixture it ran on was about 13.2. But if you read a plug, you'd swear it was over 14.
Right.
When we took the heads off, everything in the chamber indicated a 13.2 mixture, except the plugs.
Yeah. Another thing I want to talk about, even though I use it, it's not my absolute law, because the spark plug will tell you things going on inside the engine that you can't find out otherwise. You know, you may end up having a defective O2 sensor and getting a bad reading, and your engine is on the verge of melting down. So it's just a good tool to have in the toolbox.
It's a good idea to have a belt and braces in this situation.
Yeah.
Right? Now I was going to say something there, Andy. Oh yeah. When you're deciding on a plug and you don't quite know what to start with, the best thing to do is to start with a plug which is too cold and an ignition system which is just too hot, right? There is no such thing as overkill on an ignition system, right? But there is plenty of reasons why you shouldn't run a plug that's too hot. If you run one that's too cold with a killer ignition, that spark is going to go through whatever is there, period, right? And at the end of the day, the best power is usually made with a plug that otherwise you'd say would be a bit too cold, but with a powerful ignition.
All right, Dust Devil Garage is asking here, is it worth running a good flowing head, let me get back up here, on a low compression engine, talking about a motorhome 440, or does the lack of compression not make it worth messing with?
Yeah.
So how do you crutch low compression?
What you need there is to use a good cylinder head and put in a shorter can. So that what happens is your dynamic compression goes up, and you'll find that without losing any top end power, the torque low down will take a big leap. And what do you need for a motorhome?
It's a 440
torque.
That's right. Well, he's going to be using that out in his No Name Nationals car. The thing about it is, one thing that we stress is it's better to have the camshaft on the right load centers, meaning the right load separation, and then everything else will fall into place. I know that's contrary to most people's cam selections, but we start out with overlap and work from there.
If you hear anybody say that lobe center line angle is a result, not an input, take it from me. They have no idea what they're talking about, right? And if they want to care to come to one of my classes, I will absolutely prove it to them.
Yeah. Let's see here.
Oh, what's this? Mopar Man 1978.
Let's see. There it is.
DV, what's your opinion on the Guns Color Tune kit for fuel?
That was back in the 60s or 70s.
You know what? I used to use a lot of those. No, I used to use those a lot.
There you go.
Right. Get it around the right way. I found that they were just absolutely super for getting the idle mixture just right on the money. I mean, for what you paid for them, right, and what you got as a result. I could set up SU carburetors with the aid of one of those and a good timing light and some screwdrivers and things like this. And they would idle unbelievably. I mean, a 4-cylinder was like a 6. A 6 was like a V8.
Yeah.
Right. Now, one of the other things I did to check the off idle mixture was I would jack the car up, put it on blocks under the axles, and then rev the engine up to a certain RPM, and then put the handbrake on and pull it down so it was under load, right? And have somebody read what it was. And so now I had it at idle and
under a load.
And under a small load. I mean, it was only like equivalent to about 35 miles an hour. But that's where you use all the damn fuel, right?
Mhm.
And that was back then. We got good results from that, right? So it's one thing.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
I've actually seen just a handful of those kits at like swap meets, like new old stock stuff. And I've always been intrigued by them, but I've never bought one.
Well, they can't be wrong.
Well, that's true.
Right? You're actually looking into the cylinder, right? As soon as that mixture goes from blue to yellow, you know that yellow is caused by fuel that's unburned. Right? And that's it. There's no calibration, no nothing. That's how God made it.
Yeah, that's physics. You can't
That's
change it.
physics, yeah. So, and here's the other thing. The transition point was quite sudden. I mean, on your SU carburetor, you just go tweak like that and it went from blue to yellow.
That's another point that I want to make when it comes to using oxygen sensors with a carburetor. When you read plugs, and that's your only avenue, you cannot separate the circuits in the carburetor and tell what it's actually doing at that given point. For example, like if you just go down the road at 60 miles an hour, you're only finding out what it's going to do at that particular RPM and speed. Whereas with the oxygen meter, I was able to dissect the idle circuit, the transfer slot circuit, and as you go through each one of those circuits, I could have the idle circuit dead perfect and have the main circuit perfect, but transition be pig rich.
Yep.
And then you would never see that with a plug reading. You would never see that, because chances are you're going to just be in the main circuits when you're doing a plug reading. So when you can actually balance out every single circuit in a carburetor using an O2 meter, that's when it's worth its weight in gold.
Yeah.
I promise you this, it saved, I have it's a fast dual channel wideband.
Yep.
About $450, $500, but I promise you, it saved me way more than that in fuel, especially having to run 93 octane.
Success at motor racing means making sure that you've optimized every avenue that's possible. Right? Not some of them, but everyone. Mixture is a big deal. I mean, it came to the point where when I did say a head and carburetor swap on a car, one of my ported heads, maybe an exhaust manifold, intake manifold and carburetors, I would refuse to do it unless the person concerned would cover the cost of me going up and getting on the chassis dyno to calibrate it all. Right? Because you cannot rely on parts being made exactly the same.
Right.
I mean, whoever would send you a carburetor or a pair of carburetors and say, oh, they're already calibrated, all you've got to do is bolt them on. Well, calibrated for what? Whose cylinder head? What cam? Etc. No. I know how to bolt them on, but I'm not going to trust anybody's calibration until I've proven it right. And the thing is that the number of times the calibrations didn't suit the cam and head mods I'd done was quite numerous. And the other thing is once you've got a dyno sheet, right, you can shove that into your customer's face and say, this is what you paid for.
That's right.
Right now, normally, I remember one guy, I did a cam and, no, head and
I'm going to go get some water. I'll be right. You want water?
No, I'm good. I did a head and a pair of Webers on his cross-flow Cortina. And I promised him somewhere in the region of 120 at the wheels, right, with it. And anyway, there was, the engine was a little on the tight side. I think the bore friction or whatever, the best I could get out of it was 110. And anyway, he came picking his gone. Was in Birmingham, England, right? He came in at the appropriate time, and I said, "Your car's done, but I got a bit of bad news for you." And he says, "Oh, what?" And I said, "It's only making 110, and I promised you 120." He says, "You know what? I had a feeling that you'd say something like that." And I said, "But before you start putting me down on this, take it out for a drive." Right?
He was
Well,
surprised.
He nearly spun it.
Yeah.
And he comes back and he says, "My God, it goes like a rocket ship." And I said, "You want your money back on it?" "Oh, hell no." Right? But it was about 10 horsepower down. Oh, I no, we did a rundown on it, and it was a gearbox.
Yeah.
Right? The gearbox had high rolling resistance.
Yeah, and you micro polished the gears in it.
No, I didn't do anything. It wasn't my job.
Oh.
Right? He didn't have the budget for that, and I'd have just told him to get another gearbox.
Street Fox 347. What wideband better than between Innovative and AM? I've used Innovative.
Yeah.
And my opinion, and which is like buttholes, everybody's got one, but the fast meter seems to be more responsive than the Innovative. That's just my observation, that it's a little bit faster processing than the Innovative wideband.
The Innovative one that I had
It's good.
was that was 18 to 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
And it was good. I was real pleased with it.
Hippie Miller, he's one of our regular viewers. eBay heads worth getting or a waste of time? What do you think?
You know what? I was just thinking about that. Richard did some testing on that.
Mm-hmm.
eBay head or
like AFR or something.
Yeah. And the eBay head was, as I remember it, obviously not as good as the AFR head, but I can't remember much else about it now.
My suggestion is, if you're in a rock and a hard place and you're trying to justify upgrading stock cylinder heads,
yep,
and you can get those eBay heads cheap, get them, put good components in them, and 9 times out of 10 they will be fine. And they will outperform the factory head, not by much,
unless we've reworked it.
Unless we rework them, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's all in. A lot of the things with those heads is making sure that you're using high quality valves, springs, retainers, making sure that guide clearance is perfect, that type of thing.
That's one of the things that, you got to watch that. Some of the guides,
We've seen
some of the guides have been kind of this shape.
Yeah.
Right? What's this, John K? The issue I'm having with and with a carb is the slow response. Idle circuit running at 14.7 to 15.2, then I give it more gas driving, and the AFR shoots up to 60 and then settles back.
What kind of carb is it?
That sounds like you need to, well, 2 things to consider here is that when you give it a bit more gas, is there any hesitation?
Yeah.
If there isn't, maybe the engine doesn't mind 16 or 17 to 1. But if there is, then this sounds like a pump, accelerator pump deal. Or part of the transition circuit and the emulsion well.
Yeah. And another thing too, you need to make sure that your timing curve is right before you start going down that road as well, because you need to have the right amount of timing in it. So there's multiple answers.
Yeah. Now, if you've got timing and mixture to adjust, always do the mixture first, right? Because the air fuel ratios at different ratios burn at different speeds and require different ignition advance. Right? I see some of these TV programs, they're losing 30 grand a show, right? And they say, well, we set the timing first and then we'll get to the mixture. No, you set the mixture first with some nominal timing you know is not too advanced. Get the mixture right, then you go
That's exactly
to the timing.
right.
Now, when you've optimized that, you may have to go back and very vaguely tweak the mixture, but it won't be much, and sometimes it's nothing.
I will say this. Greg did promise me that we were going to have 2 days on the dyno with mixed up balls. It'll be a Friday and Saturday. So I can't wait to see what we can play with. I'm going to drag you with me.
Oh dear.
Oh yeah. He's going with me.
Well, that's not too shabby. There's a sandwich shop just around the corner, and the gal that's behind the counter is well worth buying a sandwich from.
Yeah. John is saying no hesitation. So it doesn't have hesitation when it goes that lean.
Right. Now that's good. You've got something going on right there for it to go to 17-1 and not misfire. Most V8s with conventional ignition won't go much past 17-1. They may make it to 18-1, but that's usually it.
That's in a perfect world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when I did my Round America economy drive in a Mini, the team of guys that I was responsible for, I got to work with a guy called David Ray, who was outstanding engine guy, right? And a couple of other guys, machinists and things like this. But anyway, we managed to get our engine to run part throttle at driving speeds from 30 miles an hour to 70 miles an hour with an air fuel ratio of 22-1.
That's crazy.
Right? And we got down to a brake specific at part throttle of under 0.5 and at full throttle under 0.33. Right? And in that Mini, it was tested at the Motor Industries Research Association at Lindley, just outside of Coventry, by two guys who were members of that. You had to be a member. You know, basically the big three were the ones that funded it. So I couldn't even go in to see this test, and it was raining. But at 30 miles an hour, they did just a tad over 100 miles to the gallon. So now, this begs the question, is a 100 mile per gallon carburetor for real? No, it's bullshit. And I can tell you why. I can say the carburetor I had on that car allowed it to do 100 to the gallon, but the 100 mile per gallon carburetor itself is bullshit, right? And that's something I'm covering as an addendum to what Uncle Tony did.
Right.
Right? He introduced us to the fallacy of the 100 mile per gallon carburetor.
The legend of it. Yes, it's been going around for years.
He did a very good job without getting into high tech, right? And I thought, boy, this is a good subject. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put engineering numbers to it.
Right.
Right? That's in case people argue with Tony.
Yeah.
They say, well, hey, here's the engineering side of it. You can't argue with this.
Yeah.
Boom. Right?
Yeah.
So look out for that down the road on my channel.
This is one of my regular viewers, Blocko 2. Do I have an adjustable cam gear
I know him.
on mixed up balls? No, I do not. But it does have the adjustable timing set where I'd have to take the cover off to make the changes. I basically put the cam in where he said put it in.
Vertical. The cam straight up.
Yeah. Believe it or not, in our dyno testing over the years, tell them how much variation just by having the cam on the right center line, how that can affect the power.
Oh,
I mean, let's just say a 6 degree swing or something like that.
Oh my God, that's disaster area.
Yeah, we have seen that.
Right? Look, I had a very successful cup car engine builder, and he was building a 331 for one of the well-known cup car guys, right? Which was going in a Jeep, which Prestige Motorsports were building for them, right? Made a great job. I mean, this wasn't a Jeep body. They made the Jeep body, right? But anyway, what happened was he said, hey, you built a lot of these small block Fords. How does this number look? And I said, well, you're down on foot pounds. He says, I thought it was quite good. And I said, no, what's your cam? I said, I think you got a problem there. And I looked at it, and I said, this is the problem. He says, this was spec'd by one of Comp Cam's top guys. And I said, look, the lobe center line angle is 2 degrees too wide. I said, if you get those same two lobes and put them on a lobe center line angle 2 degrees tighter, you'll pick up 20 foot-pounds and 20 horsepower with no loss anywhere.
Yes.
Right? And he said, well, I don't know. I said, hey, I'll tell you what. Get the cam, put it in, and dyno test it. If it doesn't make 20 horsepower and 20 foot-pounds more, I will pay for the time it took you to put that cam in. I will buy the cam off you, and I will pay for the day's dyno time that you wasted. Anything out of pocket, I will cover, right? And I said, would you like me to write the check for you now? So that all you got to do is hand it to me back, right? And he says, no, he says, I'll take your word for it, right? Anyway, about a week later, he calls me up and he says, technically you owe me, this all came to around about $700.
Right.
Right? Yeah, about $750, right? And he had to me $750. I said, why? He says, well, we only made 20 horsepower and 19 foot-pounds of torque.
That's pretty funny.
And you know what impressed this guy most? Was that I told him it was going to work before ever getting on the dyno.
Yeah.
And I told him within 5% on the torque what it would be, and was exactly right on the horsepower.
To give you a little background, when I first met David, I was big into mod motor stuff, Ford mod motors. I still love them, don't get me wrong. But we did the same test. We had, how many, 3 or 4 sets of cams?
This was for quickly
the 2-valve.
Yeah, the 2-valve. But the cam company was it
Lanani?
Yes, right. The company that said I was a bit old school.
Yeah.
Right.
So basically Lanani sent us 4 different sets of cams. They all have the same load profile, same lift, duration, but they were ground on different load separations. This was when they were developing their mod motor line of cams. And so David told me what was going to happen before we even put it on the dyno. And basically we started out at a 114 load separation, went down to a 112, 110, and a 108. And when we got down to the 108, it was...
No, it was the second one.
Yeah, the second one.
It was 110.
Yeah, no, it was 111. It was odd. I remember that. It was 111.
Because
we couldn't go any tighter because of the valve to piston clearance, and then I had to clearance the valves. Yeah. But anyways, in each step of the way, we basically made equal amounts of gains in power. And it wasn't at the top end of the RPM range or the low end of the RPM range. It was throughout the range. I mean, we're talking picking up big average power. I mean, pretty much every step we went, we picked up what was it, 8 horsepower.
We told them, this is what it needs to be on the load center line angle, right? And they promptly came out with a cam that was 3 degrees wider.
Yeah, 3 degrees wider.
So all that dyno testing.
We did all the dyno testing for them. They didn't
what they needed, and they made a cam which...
The cam was more drivable. I mean, it made way more torque down low, but hey, whatever. John K is asking here about a 454 low compression, 8-to-1, running 30 degrees, all in at 3,000 RPM. I don't know what the question is.
That's a statement of.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
that's, you saying, are you asking is the 38 degrees right, or?
Low compression usually needs more advance on it because it burns slower.
Yeah. And this is a good point right here. I regularly see 20 to 50 horsepower playing with intake centerline on the dyno with 1,000 horsepower engines.
Right. Do you have anything with some real power?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
1,000 horsepower just sounds so good.
Yeah, 1,000 horsepower. You know, I often look at the 1,000 horsepower and I think to myself, hey, we're getting out of a car engine what the Merlin produced for the Spitfire in 1939 from 1,650 cubic inches.
Exactly. And you know, the thing that still is fascinating to me is when you talk about brake specific fuel consumption is the Lockheed Super Constellation engine.
Oh yeah, the one with the power recovery.
Wound up having what, 0.32 brake specific?
Yeah.
What you don't understand is that is
And
like
it made
pinnacle
3,500 horsepower at 25,000 feet.
Now,
hovering in the air up there.
Look, he's just showing off now. 4,000 horsepower is the largest I've ever done on an engine dyno. Man, what kind of setup was that?
That's twice what I've done. I've done a 2,000 horsepower one, right? But you know what? I bet you that 4,000 horsepower didn't come cheap.
Oh, no.
Right. I'd love to know what went into it. That's fascinating. I know a friend of mine dynoed the engine or set up the fuel injection for the engine that powered the S10 truck that set the world's fastest streetcar record.
So now we can go back to that. Said John K is given reference to the 16 to 17 air fuel ratio. So he's talking about he's running a 750 Edelbrock carburetor. Okay, I got you. It makes sense now. 130 pounds of boost to make 4,000 horsepower.
Is this a diesel? It's got to be.
I don't know.
How many cubes is it?
Now, Terry Grover, I don't know if you've seen his stuff.
I know the name.
You guys need to talk. He used the Alphabet Ecamm, degreed it, and the car went 127 at 125 shot on ported E7s in the quarter. He uses E7 heads and has made them run phenomenal.
Oh yeah, they'll
you know that
results. Yeah.
What was it, 285 CFM that you got from E7s, or was that the 289?
280 something from an E7.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a big port either. Right? I got a set over there that's a good casting, and I'm going to look at the simple mods on it, but done with, there's bronze guides in the heads and things like this.
What was the port volume on that when you finished it? Because I can't remember.
No.
I poured it, but I can't remember it for the life of day.
No, it wasn't big. You can't go big.
No.
On water.
Yeah, there's not much room there.
Diesel, yes, big block.
Said the turbo alone was $15,000.
Oh my goodness.
Power is not cheap, folks. It's just a question of how fast you want to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really excited about mixed up balls. I'm excited.
680 cubes. You know what?
That's crazy.
That's still pretty damn good power for that size engine, because diesels aren't known for revving very much. So I'm just thinking this has probably got torque up the yin yang.
I'm excited about riding around in Casper again. Aren't you?
Yeah.
You know, look, people ask me, why am I putting this thing in a truck? Well, that's what I have. But you know what? I had people saying, I can't believe you daily drive this truck. You can ask David, when the 393 was in it, I drove it every day.
To work.
Every day, unless it was pouring down like a monsoon outside.
Now, let me throw something in there. The rust that's currently on it is not protected, so he didn't want the water to make it worse.
Right. But, you know, people would trip out when I would take this thing to Lowe's. And I remember I got like 1,000 pounds of cinder block in the back of it. I got a picture of it. And people, I mean, it's literally sitting almost on the bump stops. And the guy's like, I cannot believe you're putting that in this truck. I said, it's still a truck.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you not want that? But anyways, I'm just weird. If y'all haven't figured that out by now. Let's see here.
What did Mr. Burns say there? You said about 72 gallons an hour. Yeah. Some aircraft engines will burn more than that. I mean, a 4360 burns like 140 gallons an hour.
Yeah. Astronomical amounts of fuel. Okay, this is a good question. David Leonard says, Uncle Tony claims the difference between 9-to-1 and 12-to-1 compression ratio is very small in power. Well, that is dependent on the combination itself, I would say.
That could be very well due to the heat of the intake and the camshaft being used, right? Yeah, I've said this before, you can't take anything in isolation, right? There's always that domino effect.
Yeah. See, like in mixed up boss, we're running 11-to-1 compression ratio. Most people would think, well, you can't run pump gas on that. But we're running a big enough cam to bleed off the cylinder pressure.
Yeah.
Talk about what your target cranking compression is, because I live by this.
Well, okay, let's first talk about water temperature and intake air temperature. If you keep the water temperature under 170, right,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got a good exhaust system that will allow the high temperature exhaust gases to escape and scavenge, and the chamber scavenges well, right, and you're using a cam which gives you no more than a dynamic compression of 8-to-1, then you can most likely get away with 87 octane fuel.
Right.
But you have to make sure it's new. If you leave it in your tank over the winter,
It's
then
so good.
it might not be quite as good.
See, and with the old 393 I had, it had 205 pounds of cranking compression. Okay. And basically, it would run really good on 93 pump gas as long as it was good 93 pump gas. I could tell a difference if I went to some mom and pop's gas station and I got some gas that was old. Every time I would try to cut it off, it would want a diesel for a split second. And that's a good sign that, you know, you're not having the right amount of octane. But this is a good question. This is for you. Have you already done the small block Ford head dyno?
No, I've got 2 more to do over there.
Yes.
And
it's still a
here's
work in
the
progress.
engine just here that we're going to do it on, right? But we've had some delay in parts, so, and some of them have been the most ridiculous delays that you could envisage, right? But that's the day and age of the COVID-19.
Yeah. Tall Johns, man, I'm looking forward to meeting you there. Yeah, exactly right. You can run a lot of compression as long as you got a camshaft to bleed off that cylinder pressure. James, I actually covered that at the beginning of this, but just for you, it's a little over $14,000 and $14,200. And I did a lot of horse trading to get it there.
Doug, thanks for that tip there. Shell 93, I take it that's current information.
Getting parts is a huge problem, yes. To anyone who's going to the no-name nationals, okay, you better be full swing right now, building your stuff and getting the parts ordered, because if you wait, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. So my suggestion is, first, foremost, go ahead and register. Go ahead and go to the No Name Nationals website, register, get your content, order the parts yesterday for the stuff that you're putting together, because if not, there's a good chance that you may be in a boat, especially buying camshafts. They're
already on back order.
Yeah, they're on months.
Even the back orders are back ordered. Robert Clymer.
Let's see here.
Buckle up. Things are going to get really bad. I know, but please consider it's a lot worse in Ukraine.
Absolutely. We still have it better.
Right. I mean, let's support those guys all we can. Now here's an irony, right? I when I was doing a job, a consultancy deal for Denver University, they were working with a trading company from Kiev. Now, here's the thing. I got to meet probably half a dozen Russians and half a dozen Ukrainians all at the same time, right? And I didn't give this a second thought, but here's about 12 people that I'd never met. They all spoke English, but it was somewhat broken. And I spent probably a week with them. And I got to tell you, Russia or Ukraine, they were great guys, right? This isn't a war of Russia against Ukraine. This is Putin against the Ukraine, right? Does anyone want to volunteer to assassinate him? Right?
You're going to get me taken off the air. But that's true. I mean, it's
people
have no dog in the fight.
What bothers me the most, the kids that have got killed.
Yeah.
Right? That's terrible.
It is. It is horrible. Let's see here. Let's go back to Terry. Andy, the Green Gangster had ported E7s and Anderson N51 cam, dual plane intake, 430 gear, stock short block, bin 9s at 136 on 150 shots. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, Nitrous is good stuff.
It is, but still, for that combination, that is a really good running setup. I know people that have way more money invested and have never run a single digit ET. So my hat's off to you. Let's see here. We're coming up on an hour and a half. How much longer you want to go?
Oh, I'm having a great time here.
So,
right,
what questions do you have for Mr. Vizard, my honored guest here? Because I pick his brain all the time, but this is your chance to be able to pick his brain. Most time he ignores me because I come up with some crazy idea.
Hey, Doug Nardi, read what he says there. That's a damnably useful piece of information. Doug, I would like to find out a bit more about your friend doing the tests and all that, because
that's good
we're
stuff.
Fighting octanes all the time. It's a never-ending battle.
Don't get into the winter and summer blends.
Yeah,
and all
I
that.
think that he may be one step ahead of where we are. I'm beginning to believe he is one step in front of us. So I'd like to know more about that.
Question about head gaskets. Been running the 10-14 head gaskets for way too long. Can I run copper gasket in stock without O-ring and block? It depends on what your application is. I'm going to tell you my personal experience with running copper gaskets. They can be very irritating because of leaking water. You've got to make sure everything is right. But they do work good in sealing compression. That is actually like the first thing that you do before you go down that O-ring route. But it depends on what you're doing.
Can I ask our audience a question? Because,
yes.
You know, we got some pretty knowledgeable guys on here, and I think they may be able to answer this. Many years ago, there was a company, and I think they were in Phoenix, that made copper gaskets where they painted on the gasket,
yes.
right? And then they acid dipped it so that when you stripped off it was paraffin wax, I think.
Yes.
When you strip the paraffin wax up, right, it had like a raised firing around the bore, around the water holes and that. And I knew a guy who had used them, and he said he went from having a head gasket problem to no problem whatsoever, period. And that was a motor which had a lot of nitrous going into it. Anybody know if that company is still around and whether they still do that?
I don't know. I remember that back in the day. Here's a question for you from John. Well, David, in addition to fundraising for St. Jude's, what do you want to do at the No Name Nationals?
Rum and Coke.
You hear that? No, we've got some special things planned that David is going to be there. So if you see us there, make sure you come up and say hi to him because he loves talking, if you can't tell.
Only if they're knowledgeable.
Yeah.
Right. And they're not going to waste my time. I don't have much time left, guys. Okay, Big Block 02. Now that's an interesting tip there. The hardening aviation sealant is the best on copper gaskets. Do not use copper coat. Thank you very much for that tip. That's something I was unaware of, right?
Yeah.
And you know, since we're starting to build some turbo motors, that might be something I should definitely take note of.
That's good stuff.
And if I forget it, I know where to get a hold of you.
So I want to ask you this question for the viewers.
Yep.
Out of all of your extensive magazine article writing career, book writing, what is one engine project that stands out in your mind that you were just blown away by? What is the single most engine project? Let's make it domestic V8.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this, Andy. The one project that I spent the most time on was the Great Nitrous Oxide Shootout. Right, that was, I think, October 81 edition of Popular Hot Rodding. And I remember it's probably, and it probably still is, the longest magazine article in an automotive magazine at that time. It was 22 pages.
God.
Right? And it was a very interesting concept. What I did was I got the late Frank Townsend, the Pro Stock guy, to order a nitrous kit from, I don't know, about 8 companies, the prominent ones, right? And at the same in the same time period, I called them up and got one to test. And I made sure to them to make it clear that what they sent me had to be exactly what they sell. right? And I was going to dyno test them, and if they wanted them back, that was fine. They could have them all back. Yeah, I didn't need a nitrous kit. Now, the reason that I did this was that a couple of engine friends of mine.
Now this is 1981.
This is 1981. Yeah, they bought a nitrous kit off a well-known company, and it's supposed to make 150 horsepower. Well, it made 75, and I'm pretty damn sure that 75 is not that close to 150, right? So this kind of ticked me off that it was blatant, right? And they said, well, the last one we had was about the same, right? And I thought, well, this is false advertising, something that I get pissed off ever since I was a kid, right? The grape nuts thing.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, so I decided I was going to build an engine and dyno test all these kits. And after I got the kits from the companies, I then called each one of them up and I said, I hope this is the same as what you're selling, because I got Frank Townsend to buy one from you, right? And also, I had Frank's desk salesman ask a given set of questions and write down the answers for it, right? And that was to test each one to see how much they knew. And I was horrified to find that only one of those companies knew what the chemically correct fuel nitrous ratio was. And they're selling nitrous kits. It turned out the bottom line was I knew more about nitrous than they did, right? And anyway, the thing was I tested all these nitrous kits, and then gave them the results. And I heard on the grapevine that one company, I didn't hear it on the grapevine. I heard it from a guy
firsthand
that was well in contact with this company, that the boss had put out a contract on me. If I published that story, I would be shot at. However,
time out. I got to give a shout out. My wife is on here, guys. Yes, my wife's name is Mandy. So she is on the thing saying hey to us.
She is where?
Right here.
Oh, yes. Hi, Mandy.
Okay.
Don't forget, he deserves a beating tonight.
Please.
Anyway, the thing is I went ahead and published it anyway, right? And the reason I'm still here is that I managed to come up with a plan that if this guy had me assassinated, he simply got assassinated himself, right? And I thought, if he thinks he's going to intimidate me, got another thing coming, right? It's not going to happen. So, guys, not only did I do this article under a life threat, but also it was 3 months' work, and after I've been paid and I sold all my nitrous kits, I was only $3,862 out of pocket.
So how did you get the editor to allow you to have that big of a spread of an article?
The story, when they read the story, right, they didn't want anybody, they did not want, Popular Hot Rodding editor did not want me to offer this to Hot Rod.
Yeah.
Or Carcraft, right? Because he knew they would jump on it, right? So that was it. And what else? Yes. So here's the point. When people say to me, yeah, but how much do you get paid? You must be taking bribes or something. You know what? My first reaction is I just want to smash them in the face. No, I'm risking my life to tell you what it really is. I'm not getting paid for this. I am paying to tell you. Right?
So this question right here, Pat's wanting to know which kit was best.
Two of them stood out, NOS and ICE, which was bought up by Quick, the carburetor company that Holly just bought up.
They bought up so many.
Barry Grant.
Barry Grant, yeah.
Right. And that was it. Right. So anyway,
we should swap stories sometimes. As a tech inspector, I can count the number of times when my life has been threatened. I've been in that situation before, being a former tech inspector. Not fun. Paul is saying, salute, your knowledge is awesome. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. You're welcome.
You know, it's kind of amazing. I've been working with David for close to 20 years, and we have become extremely good friends. But like every time I come over here, I'm still amazed. You know what I'm saying?
It doesn't take much to get him amazed.
I am still amazed, you know, at the wealth of knowledge. You know, I've been with him doing numerous projects, and what's that?
John, there, have I tested the? No.
Oh, the trick flow.
No, you know what? I can't remember ever doing a big block Chrysler, a wedge head. I helped a friend of mine do a
Dosage.
a Hemi, not the current one, the middle one, right? And that is the only, in quotes, big block. That's a big block in there.
So
right. So no, I don't know.
How did you not do Mopar heads when you were working with Steve Dosage back in the day?
Steve did them. Right? Right? Steve, I had a lot of fun working that guy. For about 5 years, Steve was over my shop probably 4 days a week. Right? Used my dyno and mill and flow bench and things like this, which he was very welcome to, right? I tell you what I liked about Steve, he always tidied up after me, right? But also, you know, I gotta say this, when you see Steve on the Motor Trend channel, you don't see the full extent of that guy's capabilities, right? I think they told him to tone it down because he was maybe too technical, right? But he's a very capable guy, right? And but there is one thing that really ticks me off about him is he's a brilliant writer. I can't even come close.
This is a good question. Joseph asked,
Well,
do you still have your Trans Am?
No, a friend of mine in Texas has it, right? And he's rebuilding it with a big block.
Yeah. Let's see.
Oh, BB block 02. I've used 4 different swirl meters or methods of measuring swirl. Currently on the bench is my favorite one, and that's the one from Performance Trends, right? It's reliable as hell.
It does work good.
And you know, I can't remember what I paid for it now, about $400 or something.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I can't remember what I paid for it. But anyway, that's not to say the others don't work, but there's numerous ways of doing it. When I was a kid, I wanted to know what swirl was, so I came up with a dastardly simple way of doing it. I put 2 holes in the cylinder going in such that they were aimed at the wall. So here's a round hole like that. They went in just here. So as it swirled, right, if it was swirled one way, it went into the hole and made the manometer
Depression.
drop down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the other way. Now, what I would do is I would put this in with clay, and I would turn it up and down like this to find out what angle the swirl was. Now, one of the swirl meters I had software which would tell you from the flow, and it was a torque one. Just measured the torque the swirl would exert, and some other stuff you put into it, and it would tell you the swirl angle, right? But the simple one with the two pipes, one measured it going one way and one measured it going the other way. You can't get much cheaper than that. 2 pieces of screen washer
Right.
hose, right? And so I say plasticine, modeling clay. I'm
There you
still
go.
in England.
Yeah, modeling clay. Glad to have you, Critter. Okay. Stock block 351 stroke to 410 with Victor Jr. heads.
Good cylinder heads.
Good cylinder head. 205s came out at 13.4 to 1 compression. Rings gap for 150 shot. What size solid roller cam would you use? So I'm assuming this is going to be in your Fox body car.
Yeah. You know what? Rather than try and guess it, I would prefer to run it through my computer program because it'll come out like right.
Yeah. It's going to be a healthy camshaft, I can tell you that. It's probably, I mean, depending on where you're wanting it to make power, the intake, carburation setup, you're probably going to be somewhere in the 260 at 50 range.
Dayton, Ohio, Critter.
Yeah.
Right? I've spent a lot of time in the museum there, the Air Force Museum.
It's pretty
Right.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that B-70 Valkyrie looks mean from the ground up. It looks serious business. Like, don't screw around with me. You won't like it. Right? It's evil looking.
My buddy Jenks from Australia is in the house. Guys, both your opinions on the card choice for Casper. Well, we talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
We're actually going to go the Dominator route in one shape, form, or another. And it's probably going to be small Dominators. And I really like that post that you did about the Cleveland tunnel ram, because that's the things that David and myself is trying to fix with this manifold to make it deliver the goods on this 429-inch engine. That will be a good cam for that combination. It's 255, 267 on a 108 Howards.
Now, quick question here for Critter. Did you say you were from Australia?
No, Critter's from, let's see here. He's from Dayton.
Yeah.
Jenks is from.
That's right. It's
Yeah.
the next one down.
Yes, he's my buddy. He's big into Cleveland.
Well,
He has an awesome car. You need to look his
just say
channel up.
hi to all my buddies in Australia. I think that's all of them. It really is. Actually,
Let's see
I
here.
shouldn't be laughing about this. I've had several of my friends in Australia pass away lately.
Todd McCarter saying thank you, DV, for sharing all this with us.
Dan Beth's car.
Yeah, I've never heard of that. What is that, Tall John? Maybe I need to check them out.
Yeah. To be honest, I've never heard of them, but that doesn't mean that they are insignificant or anything. There's a limit.
Here you go. This is a question.
Wait a minute. Where do you tap the manometer when you are using
Using
the
the Helgeson calibration plate.
Oh, okay. I was a step out of phase there. for some reason or another, when you said my homemade
Flow bench.
I immediately thought of the one I made when I was 15 using my
Yeah.
mother's vacuum cleaner. And I put the manometer deal into the spark plug, right? And that's where, and it didn't measure CFM, it measured depression,
Right.
right? Now, okay, now I've got a better idea of,
Normally it goes in the spark plug well. There you go.
yeah. So where were we?
So we're coming up on an hour and 45 minutes. Do y'all have any questions for me and the plans of Casper to beat Uncle Tony before we close this out? Because there's been a lot of talk about Casper, and I appreciate that. I'm humbled by it. And like I said, I thank each and every one of y'all for being here.
Oh, I got to tell you, he took one of the guys from the paint shop locally, and he says, on the way over to his house, he said, I need you to match the paint. And the guy got there, and he says, what kind of joke's this? He says, we don't have any rust-colored paint.
It's patina, David. That's what everybody's calling it these days. Rust is patina.
What's the significance of that word?
It makes it more valuable.
Right.
You know, I'm still old school. I call rust. You know, I mean, but, you know.
Iron oxide.
Yeah.
I raced a car in the Caribbean that won its class, and it was lightened with extensive iron oxide treatments.
So getting to, am I taking a spare trans? The point of me thrashing to get this thing together is, like I said, I built the trans. I've been working on that today. It's a Ford C4 that's been fully rollerized, has every trick in the book, but ultimately that is not the right transmission to use for 750 horsepower and 4,000 pounds. Talking with my buddy Harold at Dynamic Racing Transmissions, and this may make some people mad, but I really don't care. We're talking about putting a turbo 400 in.
Now, that's the guy I met years ago, isn't it?
Yeah, Mervin uses him.
Stocky guy.
Yeah, good guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is a good question. What have you done to upgrade the rear and tire combo for more traction? Pretty much the drivetrain is, the rear end is all strange. It has a strange center section, a G-force locker, strange axles. So I feel really good about that. It has 1350 joints in the drive shaft. I had a custom drive shaft made for it. The problem is the transmission setup itself. Being a truck, it originally had a bolt-on yoke instead of the traditional slip yoke. And so whatever we decide to go with, we're going to end, if I go turbo 400, I'm going to have to change the drive shaft. So yeah, right now it's the Ford C4. We're going to run that and see how it does. I do not think it will live with the nitrous, especially, and all of that extra torque. But I've never seen, with this C4, it doesn't break hard parts. What it does is it kills the high gear clutches in it, because the key to it is there's not enough friction area on the clutches itself to be able to handle that type of power.
With the nitrous, you could easily be at 1,000 horsepower.
Easily.
And
lots of torque.
1,000 foot-pounds of torque.
So you got to have a transmission that's up to the task.
Yeah, yep. Your typical Austin Healey Sprite gearbox is not going to hold up.
John is saying Linko. That's down the road. I'm not giving up on that Linko. Me and David's talked about that and what cooler thing is, but
I like the idea of a Linko. I mean, I might be a bit old-fashioned now, but when they came out, I thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread.
So the thing about it is, I'm wanting to race this truck quite a bit. you know, whether it be bracket racing, heads up racing, or whatever the case is. But in order to do that, I really need a good automatic in it. And as far as the expense of the Linko, that's something I'm going to do when it's just like daily driven, something after I get the racing bit out of my system. So we'll see. But Linko will be probably the end result.
Craig, don't understand your question there, David. What are the differences from the stock RV
versus whiplash cam? There's a camshaft company, Hughes, that makes whiplash cam for Mopars, and pretty much it's like an RV cam on tighter load centers,
right?
That work really well. Yeah, the CS1s are what I would put in my drag truck. The thing about it is the CS1 is really expensive. Even ST1200 is really expensive, Linko. And I've actually talked to those guys, and they're rated for 1,200 horsepower, but they're not quite sure about the weight of the truck. That's one of the concerns they have, and they've talked about one of the upgraded boxes. Let's see here. My buddy Left for Dead Garage is here. You guys need to go over to his channel and subscribe. I think he's at like 800 and some odd right now. That's my buddy HG. I actually did a video on his Impala on my channel a while back. And hopefully this year you'll be seeing me and him doing stuff together. Super cool guy, super smart. He's diehard Chevrolet man, but I don't hold that against him. I really think the Linko, because you can get it with overdrive, I think that would be a perfect combination.
Why do the RV cams have a wide load center line angles? I can't wrap my head around this. Now, my first answer to that would be the cam company doesn't know what they're doing, right? But I don't know the circumstances of what the cams are exactly for. So I say that with tongue in cheek. But an RV cam and a low compression engine should have a pretty tight load center line angle.
Yeah. From all of our testing, or from my testing, it's always better to be on the tight side of load separation and short duration if you're worried about idle quality and things of that sort.
And if you are worried about idle quality and it turns out that it doesn't idle as well as you want it to, it's not because the load center line angle is wrong. It's because you picked a cam with too much duration. The overlap is too much.
That's right.
Not the load center line. You need to look at the overlap concern, right? Because that's ultimately what dictates the vacuum. It's the opening and closing of the two valves around TDC. Where you close that intake valve after bottom dead center has no bearing of any consequence on the vacuum.
Right.
Which means that ultimately the load center line doesn't have much bearing on what the vacuum is. It's only a band-aid so that it's not as bad as it could be because you picked too much duration.
There you go. And that pretty much sums it up. You know, especially with cylinder heads like a traditional wedge style cylinder head, whether it be small block Chevy, small block Mopar, small block Ford, they're all going to favor a tighter load separation than a wide load separation. You can test that all you want. You're going to get the same results. That's just the facts of it.
That's a good one there. Run a new 10-speed Ford Auto.
I thought about that.
I wonder how much horsepower they take.
Oh, they will handle tons of power.
They will?
Yes.
That might be something. Shall I see if I can call somebody? Like,
Well, the thing about that is, and I've looked into it, is the controller programming it, like US Shift. They sell a programmer to control that 10-speed. But they've told me that their shift programming is not quite fast enough to support that kind of power level in that truck. They were kind of iffy as to whether or not it would be a good setup. Ultimately, the OE computer is the best timely shift, because the way those computers work, that controls every one of your shifts.
yeah.
You know, it's not hydraulic, it's all electronic.
And don't they momentarily close the throttle at the shift point?
Yeah. It's
Right,
all
'cause
about torque.
It's all fly-by-wire.
Yeah. So it's a totally different learning curve that honestly I'm not willing to go down. I would rather stick with something that's tried and true for Casper. I hear you, HG. You know, the thing about mixed up balls, and I've had people asking me this, and it is a concern, is when you're building an engine that's unique as this, and it has its own rocker setup and it has its own parts, there is a bit of fear of not being able to get replacement parts if something does happen. You know, that is one of the downsides of me choosing to go this route. But it's a Jessel valve train. Greg Brown has run this combination up to 9,600 RPMs with the valve train that I'm actually using. And I'm not going to be anywhere close to that. So I feel pretty confident in thinking that I'm going to have good durability, you know, because that's something that we talked about in the beginning, is making sure that this thing was going to be able to go the long haul. Now, my question is going to be valve spring life. You know,
You're gonna have to have good valve springs on.
and it's got a really good packed spring in it.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you start, and I've got a whole video on this talking about driving solid rollers on the street and what you need to be aware of. Don't think that you're going to get 100,000 miles from a solid roller on the street. It's not going to happen.
Not unless you set out to put a profile on the
So mild it will live forever.
Yes, you've got to strike a compromise here. The best cams are the ones that destroy valve springs just after you've gone through the lights.
Yeah, that's exactly right. A lot of people has commented about using a power glide. And the reason why I would never have a power glide in that truck is when you're running a vehicle that heavy, you need the torque multiplication of having that third gear.
Yeah.
Now, if this was a 3,000 pound car, there would be no question about it. Power glide would probably be the way to go. But for 4,000 pounds and this much power, I need every mechanical advantage that I can get.
And I got to throw something in here. When the Paraglide transmission came out and it had 2 gears, I thought, what are these engineers thinking of? Right? That was way back. I mean, I was not much more than a kid back then. Anyway, here's the thing. Yeah, I've used Paraglides in race cars, and I have never been able to quite understand why they work so well. Right? Because on paper, they shouldn't work as well as they do. Right? It's like, well, anybody want to fill me in on the details here, but I don't know why a Paraglide works as well as it does.
So
they just do.
One of the things is Turbo 400 and the parts availability are being cheap. When you compare a Ford C6, because I've had many people ask me why I'm not putting a C6 in it, because Dynamic Harold, he told me, he said, Andy, he said, I can build a Turbo 400 that will live way longer than a C6 and have less money invested in it. So, and just like HG said, you know, Turbo 400 is the simplest choice between the two. You
But
know,
they suck power.
they do, but that's why you've got to make a ton of it.
Yeah.
Jimmy Ford is asking, does this sound like a good cam for a Gen 3 Hemi? Intake 224 at 50, 236 on a 116 LSA.
No. Next question.
Yeah.
No. I think 116 is just a shade too wide. With a Hemi,
Yeah.
you've got to have, you've got to limit the overlap, because if you get too much overlap, what happens is the flow comes screaming in that intake valve and goes screaming straight out the exhaust, right? And that's not good, right?
You know,
it doesn't help power or anything, right? So a Hemi does require to have a wider load center line angle because of this crossover situation. But I'm thinking, what the heck's the compression on this engine? And that's another thing,
Yeah.
right? The chamber shape for a Chrysler Hemi is not good for high compression.
Well, the
right?
new one is fairly decent.
The new one.
That's what he's talking about. The Gen 3 Hemi.
Where does it say?
Right here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The
Yeah,
Gen 3 Hemi, the one we were thoroughly impressed with it.
Yes. Now, that cylinder head on the Gen 3, people say, it's not a genuine Hemi. It's better than a genuine Hemi.
Yeah.
Right? For the simple reason that it's got those two
quench pads,
semi-quench pads either side, right? And two spark plugs and things like this. And there's a lot of stuff that's optimized on that.
You know, that's one thing I want to talk about on Mixed Up Boss. You know, the unique chamber. It's kind of a semi-Hemi, and it's got the quench pads that's angled. One of the things that we did, and I didn't go into this in any video, is I had the deck blocked. I mean, the block deck. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. And the reason why, even though this was an assembled short block, the decks were out of square from Ford Racing. Just so you know that. They were 12 thousandths out of square.
They were, weren't they?
Yeah.
And I said, wait a minute, we can measure that with a wooden rule.
So what we did is I took it down to a 9.48 inch deck height to get the piston above the deck surface. And then that does two things. It reduces crevice volume of the top ringland. And then I angled the quench pad of the piston to match the head. That's something that I haven't even talked about, but that's just one of the little tricks that we have done.
That's a good way to go. And here's the other thing, right? It is very, with the Chrysler Hemi, it doesn't have swirl, it has tumble.
Yeah.
I remember being up at at Chrysler with the engineers who designed this, and I said, what was the reason for using tumble instead of swirl? And they said, well, it was more convenient and it works. And I said, yeah, but at 10.5 to 1, it's almost all gone, right? As the piston comes up the bore, so it tends to quench the tumble, right? So at 13 to 1, you don't have any. It's done for. However, with the tapered quench, right? If you have one side tapered and the other side flat, you can re-energize that tumble at the top. However, it is better to have twirl, that is swirl and tumble combined. Right now, what's good about this Chrysler Hemi engine is two spark plugs.
Yeah.
Right? That gives the combustion process in that engine it's a really good burn.
Yeah. There was another good one up here. I can tell you, talking with Greg Brown, now this is coming from him, which he worked at John Cossey for years. He said if you can have the valves touch each other at 250 thousandths on a Hemi, to where they will actually make contact. He said you can run any camshaft that you want inside that engine and it will not contact. So that is kind of like something that I stuck in the back of my mind when he told me that. You know, he said if both valves will open at least a quarter of an inch before they touch each other, you have fair game as far as the camshaft profile that you can run.
Well, you have fair game for running the right camshaft profile. Right. Obviously, if you put one in
that's wrong,
which had too much overlap, and it's going to hit. But there again, it wouldn't have made any horsepower anyway. Not worthwhile.
Yeah.
I remember.
Baby Shark, what's up, buddy? It's good to see you. You know, the thing about the LS cams is they typically do run a lot wider LSA compared to other engines.
And you'll hear them say, well, that's what the fuel injection needs. That's a little bit of an overstatement, right? I was talking to a guy that is extremely good at calibrating engines, right? It's just good. And he says that's not necessarily the case. Sure, you can have too much overlap or too tight a lobe centerline angle, but people make a big deal out of it when it's not the big issue that most people claim it to be.
Yeah. Second choice would be a 4R100. I agree, those would be excellent choices, but once again, I'd still have to have an electronic controller to operate it. And for me, is the minimum amount of electronics on that truck I have, the better off I am. It's not that I'm anti-electronic. I'm not. I've ran the most high-tech stuff that you can think of, but for this truck, it's old school, and that's the way I want to keep it. Did I check out? Yes, I did, Critter. I did. You know, the 3-barrel Holly is very interesting. You know, that you just don't see them much anymore. I have never personally worked on one, and I would love to get my hands on one just to fiddle with. But, you know, the Dominator came onto the scene, and it pretty much rendered it useless pretty quick.
Well, Dave Braswell had his version of that worked dynamite.
Yeah.
And I forget what the airflow was, but boy, it was very dominant.
Yeah. Well, the original 3-barrel was two versions, a 950 CFM and a 1050, depending on the type boosters it had.
I got a feeling that Dave's was around 1200 CFM.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I did not see the dyno test for it, but I'm pretty sure I remember Dave saying that it worked out very well on the dyno.
Critter, I'm very jealous. You live near Ohio, George.
Oh, I met him in 1964 at Blackbush in England. And I got a little story to tell.
Well, tell it.
Right? He got this, I think it was a pale blue Willys.
Yes, it was his gas.
Right, blown Chevy. I'm sure it was a Chevy. Right.
Back then it probably was.
But it doesn't matter, right? Anyway, Sterling Moss was there at this meeting with the Ferguson 4-wheel drive Formula One car.
Right.
Right. Now, I've been helping do some setup on the track and sweeping gravel off and all this stuff. And I thought, well, I'm going to go and watch some racing, right? So there was already a fair crowd behind the barriers at the start line. Right. So anyway, I came up and I was standing behind these two guys, and George comes in to line up against Sterling Moss. And these two guys, I don't know, they're probably 17, 18. And one of them said to the other, if that yank thinks that old car is going to beat a Formula One car, he's got to be out of his tiny mind, right? They assumed that this car, this 1937 Willys, was a 1937 Willys, not a dragster with a body on it, right? And when the flag came down and it just blitzed the Formula One car, I mean, it was like 3 seconds faster.
Oh my gosh.
They didn't say anything for ages.
I bet. That's
Right?
pretty awesome.
It's like they kind of looked at each other in sheer amazement, right? So, and I remember looking at Don Garlett's tire marks up the strip when he did his first run.
Yeah,
Right? They went all the way to the end.
that's
But
crazy.
that was the days when it was real spectacular. Smoke the entire quarter mile.
Exactly. Let's see here. Well, I think we're going to cut it off. We're over 2 hours. I really thank you guys for coming on board and watching this with me and David. But I really thank you for your support of my channel and David's channel. And if you haven't checked out David Vizard's channel, go over to David Vizard Performance and subscribe to his channel, ring the bell, all that good stuff, because he gets into really hard nut and bolt stuff that I've been around with him for years. And, thank you for the 15,000 subscribers and the 2 million views, all of that. I cannot wait to see what the future holds for us and this whole YouTube thing.
Oh,
I mean,
we have plans.
we've got plans.
We have plans.
We have plans. And, it's just an honor to be able to sit here and chat with you guys. And to all of the No Name National guys, I really enjoy your channels. Keep up the great work. Just make sure that you know that steady wins the race. Get your 500 subs, but if you want to continue down this YouTube thing, it is a great thing to do. And that's pretty much all I've got. Have you got any parting words?
Yes, 4-valve video, please. Right? I am going to be doing a video on the world's most powerful 4-valve per cylinder head modification.
There you go.
Right?
So that's pretty much it, guys. I think we're going to call it. I appreciate y'all coming out. Until next time, this is Andy from Union Motorsports Garage.
And it's me from here.
David Vizard, one and only.
I'm at home.
Yeah. Catch you guys later.